Well, it looks like we're getting some rain. Might be some nice ambiance for woodworking, maybe even some thunder here in a minute, who knows. Anyway, let's move on to the rafter tail half lap. Keep in mind that there's a different distance back from the long rails, long rafter tails, and the short one. And in the end, what we're after is a joint that fits flush. But we're going to start with our blank material. I'll pick one of those up and show it to you. Something like this, but we're going to end up with a flat flush joint on this as well, and then after we trim it, if everything was laid out on your templates right, it should fit flush. Let's go ahead and make a tusk cut. And if this may take a few tries, it will take a few tries. Very seldom do you get it on the first try. Let me pick up the piece over here, and what we're after is it to fit. It's not quite fitting on there, so I'm going to stop here for a minute and put a shim in, and then we're going to try that again and see if we can get a little closer. Okay, well, I've set a shim in there, and I think I'm pretty close, but let's pick up our mating piece and see how it fits. There we are. So we've got a good fitting joint. So what we want to do now is we're going to find, over here I got some scrap I can use as a stop. And let me see, where's my rafter tail? I've got a line marked on there where I want it to start. And I'm going to line that guy up and set my stop and make my first good cut. There, we're good. Let's give it one more. Okay, now that we've got a good cut, you can go ahead and, referring to the drawings for the distance in and making sure that you have a different distance in for the long piece rather as opposed to the short piece, set up your stops and run your parts. And then we'll move over to the router table, and we're going to use our jigs that we made and put some shape to these guys. As you can see, what I've done is I've put the part in the template, lined it up with in there, and oh, we are starting from, this is the bottom, this is the first cut. Make sure you start here. I put it in here, lined it up with the edge flush, right on the edge, on the end, and then I turned it over and pencil marked and bandsawed to the line, leaving a little bit of material. One caution I want you to be aware of here is when you route these, one of the patterns has to go up and one down. Otherwise, we're not going to fit together right. So keep that in mind. It doesn't matter which one routes with this pattern out or in, but keep them consistent. The short ones both go in, long ones both go out, etc. Okay, so let's clamp this guy in place, and I'll turn around and turn on the router table, and we'll get started. First though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the middle of this cut. So I need something, either you have a pin in your router table or a fence or something to steady it against to ease into that. Otherwise, if you go like this, it's going to want to throw it. It'll take it and heave it for you. So for safety, start like this. And we're going to start halfway in, route down, then I'm going to turn it over and then route the other half. Okay, I'm going to take it out of the clamps and turn it around, reference it again, and route. Okay, now that I've got this bottom pattern routed, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the top portion. And again, mark it out. And I will take this over to the bandsaw and cut close to the line, and then we'll be back over here in just a moment to route this other half of the pattern. Okay, as you can see, I've bandsawed close to the line. Now I'm going to put it back in the jig, but first I need to take these Destaco clamps and turn them around the other way. Okay, we're going to clamp this guy down. And let me get it right to the, we got to reference it. I need to back up here a little bit. We need to reference right to this block. So we want to reference to that block and then clamp it down. And also take note that when we start the router, the bearing's going to start right on this point. Don't start on the wood, start right, this is what I call run out on the jig, where we can start the bearing there and then start the cut. That's safer. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to go halfway, then turn it around and repeat the process. So let's put it over on the table and get started. I'm going to take it out, reverse it, register on the end, and route again. Okay, and then do the other one, the long one, making sure that you reverse the notch will be on the top side. And once you get both of those done, then go ahead and put an 1/8 inch round over around everything. But when you come up to this joint, just leave a little bit, because we're going to come back and round that over by hand. So, and then after that, we'll go ahead and clamp them together and assemble them. Okay, we're ready to do our glue up now on the rafter tail parts. You've sanded everything up. I like to take and right at these transition points, like I said earlier, that's typical to Greene Greene to really round, give a little extra emphasis right there. Round those over just a little more. And let's take a look at the underside here. There's some end grain right here. I want to take that down to 320. And again, right here we have transition points for the that turns down right here. That's where I'm going to give it a little more emphasis on the sanding, just to give it that little bit of weathered look. Okay, also on the joint itself, let me take this one. This is still dry fit. On the joint itself, if you're not dead flush right now, this is your last chance to rectify that. So if your joint did not come out flush, you can either, let me pull this apart. You can either take a chisel and remove material, take a piece of paper, veneer, business card, whatever, and put it in there to raise it up if that's what you need to do. Also, before we glue up, this is our good chance to come back, and like I said, you were going to leave the round over when we approach the joint. So now is our chance to come back and sand that and get it good and right in here. We're going to finish that round over by hand. Okay, there we go. Actually, this is hidden unless you're deciding to put a glass top on it, and then you could see it. Okay, let's take this guy apart, put some glue in there, and we're going to clamp him up. looks like I need to spread that one a little more. And we'll get over to this guy. Down at the other end. Okay, now we're ready to pick up our clamps, assemble this guy, and clamp him together. Okay, here we go. Okay. And if you do have a little glue out there, I'd leave it and pop it out later once it dries, which I'm getting right on that corner there. A little ooze out on that one too. Okay, we've got this glued up. Once we're pull him out of the clamps, we can attach him to the base. Okay, now we're ready to do the faux tenons. I like to start with stock that's long in length, so then it's easier to machine. You need to go back to the faux tenons that you cut, the holes rather, the mortises, measure them, and make these about 10 thousandths oversized, or a light 64th, just a little bit over. We want a really tight fit in both directions. Now I'm going to start by rounding over the edge. I'm using a 5/32 bit. That's really close to 1/8. That's about a 32nd thunder. I kind of prefer the 5/32, but if you don't have that, you have an 1/8, it works fine too. So I'm just going to start by rounding this over on the end. Okay, now that we've got the end rounded over, we're going to take it over to the bench and we're going to do some final sanding, kind of make it look a little puffy and ready to cut to length and insert. Okay, now let's put a little shape to the end of this long rod where we're going to make our a faux tenon. What I'm going to do is just kind of ease it over, kind of give it kind of a pillowed look, just to real soften it up. The tangent point on our round over, that's basically, use that as a limit. Don't do any sanding past that, because we want a sharp, not a sharp, but a defined perimeter that we do not go past. So I'm going to start by putting I like to put a pencil mark right down the center, and while I'm working it, then when that pencil mark is removed, that tells me that I've sanded that whole surface. Let's put it in the vise. And I'm going to start with some 150 sandpaper. To start with, what I like to do is I like to take the sandpaper and hold it in my hand like that, with the thumb backing it up, and I'm going to do this flapping motion with my hand in the sandpaper. Going around the end of the plug. This kind of gives it an even fairing around. You can still see, it's hard to see, but there's still a little light area right here. You might have to take a light and kind of shine it around a little bit, and where you'll get used to noticing that. When you get to the higher grits, it'll really show up though. What I'm looking for is a nice, even surface before I start going to the higher grits. Let's take a close look right in there. What I've got is a nice even flow. No hard transitions. Now let's go up the grit. We were at, let's go up to 220. There we go. We're going to end at 320. Well, I do all end grain up to 320. I like to fold the paper over in thirds. It's nice and easy for my hand to handle then. We've already shaped it, so these higher grits are mainly, we're just taking out the scratches from the lower grits. And we're going to finish it off with a higher grit yet, 320. Okay, now we're ready to cut the guide to length. We've got a nice even surface on there that's polished to 320. Let's take him out. I like to use a Japanese saw. I'm going to cut it to about 3/8 of an inch long. It's not, you don't have to be scientific about that length. You just want that length to be less than the depth of the mortise that you made for this. You don't want to have to bottom out. That's now what we want to do is we want to back bevel that edge. What we've got right now is a blunt edge that's larger than the opening. We want to make the insertion in a little smaller than that opening and beveled so we can kind of gradually get into that tight fit. So I'm going to set it back down here, and then we're going to back bevel it with a chisel. Get this stuff out of the way. I'm going to leave maybe 1/8 of an inch of flat at the top. And that's basically what we're looking for. Just an insertion in that's a little smaller. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tap that in to the hole. Okay, now that we've finished shaping the faux tenons on the end, we're ready to tap them home, get them in there. I like to use a toothpick to spread the glue in there. I'll dip this into the glue and then just spread around just at the top of the perimeter, because we only need to have glue at that point where it's flat. Just around the outside right up at the beginning. It's a compression fit, so compression plus just a little bit of glue, and it's going to be in there pretty solid. I like to use a plastic headed mallet for tapping the faux tenons in. If you use a steel hammer, it's going to dent it, and a rubber mallet just doesn't have enough impact behind it. I'm going to just tap slowly. It takes a little practice to really get the feel of it. One thing you want to resist is that urge to just one more tap. If you have to err on the side of letting it sit proud a little bit rather than going forward too far. Because once you've gone past the perimeter, then it really shows. And it's, so I'm just going to right about there. If you do tap too far, you can always come back with a small drill, drill that out, and just start with a small chisel and take it all out. So go ahead and do that to all of the faux tenons around there, around the table, and then we'll get started on the ebony plugs, making them and inserting them. Okay, now we're ready to make the ebony plugs. Just like what we did with the faux tenon stock, we cut them a little bit over the size of the opening. So, you know, light 64th, 10,000, somewhere in there, you're going to cut it oversized. I get asked a lot how I cut these, and it's actually fairly simple. I just go over the table saw and say this was my wide piece of ebony that I'm going to cut. I just shove it up against the fence, and with a, you know, good pressure against the fence and a push stick, push it through. It's actually fairly simple. It's easy to do. It's nothing to really worry about. The actual polishing of the end is a lot simpler than a lot of people make it out to be. It's very, very simple once you get the hang of it. What I'm after is a very, very shallow pillow, not a big domey thing, but very shallow. So what I do is I start out with 220 grit, then I'm going to go to 320 and then 600 before I polish. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 and turn it 90 degrees and then do 1, 2, 3 again. I can look at the pattern on this 220 and I can see when I'm getting a full pass. Like you can see it's a little heavier on either side. And then I'll go 1, 2, 3, turn it 1, 2, 3, and I'm getting a pretty even pass now. And then I'm going to go over to the 320, the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 90 degrees turn, 1, 2, 3, over to 600, 1, 2, 3, turn it 90, 1, 2, 3. Now it should be ready to polish. What I'm after is just a smooth, even finish without any scratches. Sometimes you'll get ebony that has those little white streaks in them and they will look like a scratch, but they aren't. In the end, what you really have to do is polish it to find out if it is a scratch or one of those little white streaks running through the ebony. So let's head over here to the drill press. I'm using white jeweler's rouge. That's the one I like best. I've tried the maroon as well and it does a good job, but it leaves a little more residue and this one doesn't. And that's all there is to it, to polishing. Okay, now we're going to cut this guy off at about 1/4 of an inch long. And again, just like with the faux tenons, we want this to be shorter than the hole we created for it. We don't want to bottom out. So the hole was probably about 3/8 of an inch deep. We're going to cut this at about 1/4 to make sure that we have some room. Then we're going to go and we're going to back bevel just like we did with the faux tenon. This time leaving about 1/16 of an inch or so. You don't have to be too picky about it, just as long as we have a bevel going in. And that finishes the plug. And next we will go ahead and apply those to all the legs. And we also have 3/16 to do, which we will do into the rails. Okay, inserting the ebony plugs isn't really all that much different than what we did with the faux tenons. We're going to take our glue on a toothpick again and put it in the hole right around the perimeter, right up there. And then we will take our plug and we will put it in and start to tap it in. And like before, resist that urge to go the last little step. You want to make sure that we have a well-defined perimeter around there that hasn't gone past and inside the hole. So now we're going to do the same thing with the 3/16. Plug in, and we're going to tap it in just like we did before with the previous one. There we are. So next what we're going to do is we're going to go back and get our rafter tail assembly that we've had glued up now, and we're going to attach it to the leg assembly. Okay, Okay, now we're going to attach the rafter tail assembly to the leg assembly. The margin I'm looking for, what we're going to do is we're going to position the rafter tails around the legs. There should be roughly a 1/4 inch, oops, let me get them over there, clearance. And so I'm going to put these spacers in there at opposing corners and see if they work. You might end up with a slightly different dimension, and if you do, just split the difference and all will be good. Mainly what we're looking for is continuity, where it's all even. It doesn't necessarily have to be right at the 1/4. So I'm going to do the opposing corner. Okay, and then, let me see, it's looking pretty good all the way around. I think I've got about the same. It's just got to be a visual thing because we're not doing joinery here. It's just for aesthetics. So now I'm going to clamp it in place, and then we're going to get the drill out, and we're going to drill some holes for some screws. It's going to be held down with 4 screws. Let me go over to this opposing corner. And we will, there we go. Okay, I'm using number 8 flathead square drive 1.5" screw. I'm going to pre-drill and then we'll run the screw home. And I'm just going to, if you want, you can mark it out, but I think I'm usually good enough just to eyeball center and go ahead and drill. Now I'm going to take a clamp and kind of secure that corner, and I'm going to run that screw home. It's a number 8 1.5" flathead screw. Okay, good. There we go. Let's go around. We're going to do 4 places. Oh, we've already got a clamp there, so I don't need to do that. Okay, I'm going to pre-drill in this spot. And there we go. Okay. And run the screw. Good, there we are. Let's go down to the other end, and we're going to do the other end here. Okay, so we've got our clamp here that's going to steady that down. Let me pre-drill, look for center, and go for it. Okay, and run the screw. There we go. And I'm going to put a little clamp right here to hold that guy down. Okay, there we go. Find my center. There we go. Okay, and we will sink the screw in there and be done with mounting this to the legs. Okay, let me get a little run at that. There we go. Okay, so we've got the screws in there. After you get done with the finish, come back and put a little round piece of felt on there. Whether you put wood on there or glass, that felt will protect whatever you put on top. So we're done with all this structure. Now we can get on to shaping the top.